We forget that Dr. King was just in his 30s when he was assassinated. That day, on that hot August afternoon, it occurred to me that Dr. King was cool. It was so hot that he wasn't sweating. He was impeccably dressed. He had on a hat, had on a very serious brown suit, although a little dusty at the knees. And his shoes were shiny. He reached out to shake my hand, and he said in that eloquent, poetic, oratorical, gifted, and blessed voice, "Good afternoon, young Mr. Young. Good afternoon, young Mr. Young." That was a whole sermon for me. And then he shook my hand. He shook my hand. This hand. He shook this hand. Now, to me, that meant that Dr. King wanted us to be boys. He wanted us to be partners. So he didn't have to ask me. I invited myself to him. We walked to the secretary's house to pick up some papers. Didn't know what papers, but I was him. We walked down the street to see a young man about Morehouse. Didn't know what Morehouse was, but I was him. That was not the only time that I walked with Dr. King. I participated in my first of many, many demonstrations shortly after my 9th birthday. And these walks were highlighted when I was 14 years old with the March on Montgomery. You know it better as the Southern to Montgomery March. This period of time continues to have a profound impact on my life. I want to thank my parents for their permission, for their encouragement, and for their prayers. See, you gotta understand that's why this holiday is so personal to me. I want to recognize my mother. She let me go. She is here, but she let me participate in all of those demonstrations. My mother, Mrs. Evelyn Young. Would you stand up? So today, the third Monday of January, we gather primarily in African-American communities across this nation to celebrate the life and the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I want to ask you for your love. I want to ask you for your attention as I challenge myself to adequately and briefly. And let me stop for a moment. Even though this is a United Black Clergy event, it's here at Grace. And Rich, when you come as a guest speaker to Grace, I didn't know so many people had to give you instructions. Edna Harris and Anita told me to be brief so that they could get to the Martin Luther King sayings. I wasn't supposed to say that, but I want you to know. Helen Royster told me to stand up straight and get directly to the point, and not to mention her name, so I'm not going to mention Helen Royster's name. So again, I ask you, as I try to adequately and briefly talk to you about this great man, but I must also talk about us. I got to talk about us too, as the true beneficiaries of Dr. King's work. Who wants to be like Martin Luther King Jr.? We all carry the label of being human. We go about our daily activities seeing all aspects of life, maybe not all on the same day, but we all as human beings experience the good, we experience the bad, and we can certainly say that we see the ugly. As human beings, we have absolutely no defense mechanisms in place to prohibit us from processing what we encounter. This does not mean that we will react. This does not mean that we will address anything. But we have no choice but to process it and then decide if or what we will do. So today we honor a great man who encountered injustice and chose not to be a spectator, a great man who chose to discover something for which he was willing to die for, a great man who chose to commit himself to God, a great man who chose to love. And again, I ask you, and please forgive the refrain, who wants to be like Martin Luther King Jr.? A couple of weeks ago, we celebrated Emancipation Day, the Emancipation Proclamation signed by President Abraham Lincoln, which freed most slaves, not all the slaves, freed most slaves. It was intended to end slavery so that Africans could have equal status here in the land of the free and the home of the brave. The land where all men and women are created equal. The land where everyone had freedom of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Rights guaranteed by the Constitution. Did you know that the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, known as the Bill of Rights, was written right here in Mount Vernon? Right here in Mount Vernon. What hypocrisy. How could black people be true participants in this great democracy when we were only considered 3/5 of a human being? This great democracy where segregation was still legal. This great democracy where blacks and women could not even vote. Dr. King was a great American who freed America. He forced America to address the real depths of its ugliness. He unlocked many of the chains of hate and ignorance. He created change in the mindset of the white majority. He was indeed white America's Abraham Lincoln. It is for that reason that we as black people, and it is for that reason we can't fall for the old okie doke. We cannot be lured by America into honoring this great American into becoming a black holiday. Woo. We need to make it crystal clear, and especially right here in Westchester County, that this is not a black holiday. There should not only be Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard here in Mount Vernon, there should be one in Mount Kisco. There should not only be a Martin Luther King Jr. Center in New Rochelle, there should be one in Newcastle. Today, black churches should not be filled just in Yonkers, they need to also be filled in Yorktown. This is an American holiday honoring an American hero. Who wants to be like Martin Luther King? This is not a black holiday. This is not a black holiday. And while I'm on the subject, President Barack H. Obama is not the black president. He's the president of these United States of America. Dr. King's message was so disturbing and so challenging. It was a message too powerful for the ears of this nation. And so he was initially rejected. Understand, though, that he was not only being rejected by the nation's white majority, he was rejected by many blacks even in Montgomery. Yes, even in Montgomery, Alabama. And I hate to admit it. There were some well-educated, well-behaved, good colored people who did not